Lawyers. When did the greedy ex push too far and accidentally hand over everything? Story 1. I represented a woman whose ex-husband tried to argue in court that he was entitled to half of her premarital inheritance, a family ranch valued at nearly $1.2 million. His claim was based on the fact that he helped feed the horses a few times during the marriage. What he didn't know is that we had records showing he never lived on the property, never filed taxes showing income from it, and in fact, had sent threatening texts years earlier demanding she sell the place and cut him a check. We introduced the texts in court as rebuttal evidence to show he had no emotional attachment or involvement in its maintenance. The judge was visibly annoyed at the ex's entitlement. But the real kicker? While cross-examining him, he admitted under oath that he'd funneled marital funds into a private investment portfolio without her knowledge. Boom. That opened the door for us to subpoena those records. Turns out, he'd made over $200,000 during the marriage through that portfolio, money he never reported or disclosed. The judge ruled in my client's favor on every point. She kept the ranch and was awarded half his hidden assets. His greed cost him everything he tried to steal. Story 2. My client was a quiet, kind man whose wife had filed for divorce after cheating on him. She wanted the house, alimony, and full custody of their dog, citing emotional support as her reason. Problem was, she listed the dog as an asset in her financial disclosures and valued him at $5,000. Yes, she tried to claim the dog had market value, but in doing so, she accidentally triggered a clause in their prenup. The clause said that any asset, defined as something with a declared dollar value, purchased or obtained post-marriage over $2,000 and claimed by either party would revert to the other spouse. She'd adopted the dog after they got married with his credit card. So, by trying to assign value to the dog in court, she ended up legally handing it over to my client. She sobbed when she realized she'd given away the only thing she truly wanted. Meanwhile, my client walked out smiling, with the dog in his arms. Story 3. This one still makes me laugh. A woman came into my office desperate to get out of a divorce where her husband was demanding alimony. She was a successful VP at a firm, and he was unemployed for most of their marriage. During mediation, his lawyer kept pushing for more. Half her 401k, alimony for 5 years, the works. My client was fuming. She agreed to settle high just to end it. Then he made a mistake. He insisted on taking her entire vintage comic book collection, saying he deserved something fun after all this. Thing is, the collection was insured at $38,000, but we knew it was actually worth 10 times that on the private market. She'd inherited it from her dad, but never formalized the transfer. His greed for the collection meant we got to renegotiate the entire agreement. He wanted it instead of alimony. We agreed. A week after the settlement, he tried to sell a few issues. They were flagged as stolen by a collector's registry because they were still insured under the father's name. He had to give them back and lost his alimony deal in the process. Judge said he waived it willingly. My client kept her comics and her money. Story 4. Represented a man whose ex-wife tried to hide assets by claiming she had no job and lived modestly on spousal support. During discovery, we found she had recently posted an online fundraiser for a women-owned coaching business under her maiden name. Videos, testimonials, even a blog full of income tips, linked to her own email address. We subpoenaed PayPal and Stripe records, and it turns out she'd brought in $140,000 over 2 years. She was furious and tried to argue it was a hobby, but her own blog post detailed pricing, workshops, and digital products. Her greedy attempt to double-dip backfired. The judge not only canceled her alimony, but ordered her to pay back 6 months' worth of support with interest. And my client got full custody due to her lying under oath. Moral of the story? If you want to keep secrets, don't broadcast them in a monetized coaching course. Story 5. I had a female client whose ex-husband refused to leave the family home after the divorce filing. He argued it was his house too, despite the prenup clearly stating the home was her premarital property. He refused every offer to move out, even when she offered to pay his moving expenses. Then, during one court session, he smugly said he wasn't moving because the mortgage is in both our names. It wasn't. In fact, his name was never on the deed, mortgage, or any utility bill. But by claiming he paid into the mortgage, he gave us an opening to request receipts. Turns out, he had used marital funds for renovations, but paid the contractors under his own name, with traceable checks. That mistake allowed us to prove he diverted over $60,000 from their joint accounts without consent. We presented the records in court. He not only got evicted but ended up owing her that $60,000 plus another $10,000 in legal fees. Sometimes, pushing too far is just handing over the shovel to bury yourself. Story 6. I once represented a woman whose ex-husband was a dentist. He wanted to avoid child support, claiming he had no income because he had sold his practice just before the divorce. He was slick. Everything looked legal on paper. But during discovery, I noticed the practice had been sold to a newly formed LLC, whose registered agent was his college roommate. Red flag. We dug deeper and discovered that he was still operating the same office, with the same staff, under the same brand, just billing patients through the LLC, a classic shell game. His big mistake came when he posted an Instagram story celebrating his record month in the practice, tagging the business account. We subpoenaed the roommate and got bank statements showing the ex-husband still collected most of the money under the table. The judge was livid. Not only did he owe back child support with penalties, but the court retroactively nullified the sale. My client got 50% of the practice's true value. His greed cost him half the business he tried to hide, and full custody went to Story 7. My client's ex-wife claimed she deserved lifetime alimony because she gave up a lucrative modeling career to be a homemaker. She showed tearful photos from fashion shoots and even dug up a signed letter from a former agency praising her potential. What she didn't know? My client still had the original prenup with an attached clause that stated she voluntarily exited modeling for personal mental health reasons, and that clause excluded any career-related compensation claims. But here's where it gets wild. Her lawyer tried to argue the clause was coerced, so we requested her medical records from the year she quit. Not only did it show voluntary withdrawal, but it also revealed she'd received a private payout from the agency in exchange for early release, something she never disclosed. The judge ruled she acted in bad faith and voided her entire alimony claim. Worse for her, the payout had grown with interest, and the court awarded my client a portion of that since they were married at the time. She tried to grab the spotlight and handed over the bag. Story 8. This one had a poetic twist. I represented a retired military veteran. His ex-wife of 2 years wanted half of his military pension, plus spousal support. She claimed she supported his whole career and had sacrificed her own goals. The judge was sympathetic until the ex took it too far. In a heated hearing, she submitted a memoir she'd been writing as part of her claim, detailing her trauma during his deployments. What she didn't realize was that the manuscript confessed she'd only married him for the future payout and admitted to having multiple affairs while he was overseas. We submitted the manuscript as evidence. Her own words, typed, edited, and time-stamped, were damning. The judge dismissed her pension claim outright and reprimanded her for emotional manipulation. My client left the courtroom with a quiet smile. She lost everything. He kept his retirement and his dignity. Story 9. A real estate developer hired me after his soon-to-be ex-wife tried to claim half his properties. She argued she helped build his empire by attending meetings and giving emotional advice. We were ready to negotiate until she filed a public complaint with the city zoning board about one of his under-construction buildings, hoping to delay it and hurt him financially until he gave her more. Big mistake. The complaint triggered a city audit, and that audit uncovered that she had signed off on an unpermitted pool in their own backyard 3 years prior, using his company name on the contractor forms. Now that made her personally liable for the violation and cost them a hefty fine. We brought it to the judge, who viewed her behavior as malicious and financially irresponsible. Instead of getting half the assets, she walked away with nothing but her own fine, and my client's zoning board issues were resolved. Her sabotage literally sabotaged herself. Story 10. This one still makes me shake my head. My client's husband tried to invent debt after the divorce started, claiming she owed him for years of business consulting he allegedly provided for her Etsy shop. He even produced fake invoices and emails showing advice he gave her, which we quickly proved were fabricated using metadata and inconsistent timestamps. But then, he made a fatal error. He submitted a handwritten ledger claiming back pay for branding, packaging design, and SEO support. We had an expert analyze the handwriting and found something hilarious. He had used a notebook belonging to their daughter, and the back pay ledger was written over faint impressions of her math homework. Worse, the timeline in the ledger contradicted other texts he had sent, praising her for doing it all herself. The judge laughed. Not only was the debt claim denied, but my client was awarded all profits from the Etsy shop going forward, and he was slapped with court sanctions for attempted fraud. His fake invoice stunt cost him any credibility and any share of the future income he hoped to steal. Story 11. I represented a woman whose ex-husband was determined to drag out the divorce just to wear her down. He'd file frivolous motions, delay court dates, and flood her with hostile emails. He even asked for spousal support despite her earning less than him. Then came the hearing where he demanded her engagement ring back, claimed it was family property and part of his grandmother's estate. She quietly leaned over and whispered to me, "That's not the ring I gave him. I replaced it a year ago." Turns out, she had the original appraisal papers for both rings. The original was insured for $3,500, but she had replaced it with a nearly identical $100 replica after he cheated the first time. She kept the real one in a safety deposit box. We brought the paperwork to court. He made a huge scene claiming it was fraud. The judge asked for proof it was a family heirloom, which he didn't have, so the judge awarded him the replica ring. And because he insisted on itemizing everything down to jewelry, the court allowed her to reappraise his luxury watch collection, which we proved were all high-end fakes. He walked out with a fake ring, fake watches, and real debt from court costs. Story 12. This one's a favorite from my early days. A woman insisted she deserved the house because she had put her heart and soul into decorating it. My client, the ex-husband, was fine with letting her keep the furniture, until she started trying to keep the house, the backyard studio, and demand half of his retirement. She made a major misstep. She submitted photos of her decorating work and home upgrades to sway the judge emotionally. In doing so, she unintentionally included several images that showed my client doing the actual construction work, installing windows, laying tile, building the studio. Even better, the timestamps on the photos aligned with weekends he'd taken off work. That allowed us to prove sweat equity in the renovations, something not disclosed in her filings. When confronted, she admitted he'd done some of it. The judge wasn't amused. The house was reappraised with the improvements as marital contributions, and the court decided to force a sale, splitting profits equally. She ended up losing the home she tried to monopolize because of her own photo evidence. Story 13. A high-powered CFO tried to bully her artist ex-husband into giving her full custody and spousal support. She claimed he was unstable and financially reckless. She even fabricated an incident saying he disappeared for 2 weeks, abandoning their daughter. What she didn't know was that he had every text message saved, including the one where she begged him to take the kid for 2 weeks while she flew to Ibiza with her affair partner. The icing on the cake? She uploaded a public rant on LinkedIn during the custody case about how single mothers are superheroes, implying she was the only present parent. We printed the post and brought the texts. The judge immediately dismissed her claims of abandonment and criticized her for weaponizing social media during legal proceedings. She lost custody, spousal support, and had to cover his legal fees. Her arrogance and greed, played out online, cost her everything she thought she could manipulate. Story 14. I had a male client whose ex-wife suddenly claimed she had been secretly part owner in his small family restaurant. She argued she deserved 50% of the business, despite having no financial records, no stake, no tax filings, and no mention of it in any prenup or filing. But her undoing came when she tried to submit a forged partnership agreement. It was a sloppy copy and paste job, with her name added to a scanned PDF. Our forensic document analyst proved the signature font didn't match the original document, and more hilariously, she forgot to update the date field, so it said she signed the agreement 2 years before she even met my client. Judge's face was priceless. He not only rejected her entire claim, but ordered a fraud investigation into her submission. She was nearly charged with perjury, and the judge awarded 100% of the restaurant and its future profits to my client, explicitly citing her bad faith. Sometimes you don't have to prove someone's greedy. They do it for you, with Word docs and bad Photoshop. Story 15. This happened during a contentious divorce where my client, a stay-at-home dad, was being painted by his ex-wife as a mooch who didn't contribute to the marriage. She wanted full custody, the house, and to pay him zero in alimony. Her reasoning? She claimed he never worked, never supported her, and sat around all day. Then, during cross-examination, her lawyer asked my client what he did every day. He answered in detail, down to laundry schedules, school pickups, tutoring routines, meal planning, and every extracurricular activity their 2 kids were enrolled in. He even had a daily spreadsheet. She tried to laugh it off until the judge asked her basic questions about their children's allergies, teachers' names, and morning routines. She got every single answer wrong. In a twist of irony, she had brought in a nanny to support her claim that the children needed stability. But the nanny testified, under oath, that my client was more informed and involved than either parent she'd ever worked for. The judge ruled in his favor. He got the house, primary custody, and out. She pushed so hard to label him useless, she accidentally proved he was the only stable one in the entire household. Story 16. A divorced couple was fighting over child support. My client, the dad, had already agreed to monthly payments and joint custody, but the ex-wife wanted more, a retroactive lump sum of $50,000 for unpaid emotional damages during the marriage. When we asked for clarification, she submitted a notebook she claimed was her trauma journal, filled with entries allegedly written during their worst years. It was a fatal mistake. First, the journal was dated and bound in leather that hadn't been sold before 2020. But more importantly, she accidentally uploaded her Google Docs draft of the same entries, with metadata showing she wrote them all within the last 2 weeks. The judge caught on immediately and asked if she understood the penalty for submitting false evidence. She backpedaled, saying it was therapeutic fiction, but it was too late. The judge threw out her retroactive claim and reduced her share of custody due to concerns about her honesty. By trying to rewrite the past, she rewrote her future into a much worse one. Story 17. My client was a school teacher divorcing her entrepreneur husband. He wanted the marital home, her car, and half of her pension, claiming he sacrificed his dreams to support her teaching job. We pushed back, and he retaliated by submitting a spreadsheet of expenses he covered during their marriage, including food, clothes, furniture, and vacations, down to specific dollar amounts. But his mistake was including charges from his secret affair. On his breakdown, we noticed several transactions at hotels and restaurants during school hours, times when my client was in class and he claimed he was consulting. She had her suspicions already, so we subpoenaed the bank statements. They lined up perfectly with his affair partner's Instagram photos. The judge was disgusted. Not only did he lose the house and the pension claim, but we filed for reimbursement of misused marital funds, and won. His own greed-laced spreadsheet became a confession. He wanted a bigger slice but served himself on a silver platter. Story 18. A couple with a shared business was divorcing. The husband, my client, was a software developer. The wife claimed she helped ideate and support the app he built, and therefore wanted 50% of the business. We asked for any written communication, design documents, or contributions she made. She sent us a long email chain between them, where she supposedly gave him ideas, feedback, and encouragement. Only problem? The email thread was dated 2 years before the app existed. She had edited the timestamps in her email client to make it look like she'd been involved from the start, but she didn't know how email headers work. We pulled the raw headers. The send dates and server data didn't match. They had all been written last month and backdated. We presented it in court. The judge dismissed her entire ownership claim and granted my client full rights to the business. She also ended up being investigated for digital fraud. Trying to fake a paper trail got her kicked off the map. Story 19. My client was an ER nurse divorcing a man who had never held a job for more than 6 months. Despite this, he asked for lifetime alimony and half her savings, arguing that her job caused emotional neglect and forced him into depression. He even brought a therapist to testify. But the therapist started her statement with, "In our 3 sessions." 3 sessions. That was it. But the best part? He had posted TikToks during their marriage mocking her night shifts and bragging about playing video games all day. In one, he joked about having the house to himself while wifey saves lives. We submitted the videos. The judge asked if he believed mocking a frontline worker made his claim more or less valid. He didn't speak after that. His request for alimony was denied on the spot, and my client kept everything she'd worked. When you mock the one holding your safety net, don't be shocked when it's cut. Story 20. During a contentious divorce, my client's ex-wife insisted that their prenup was signed under duress. She claimed she had been emotionally overwhelmed the night before the wedding and only signed it to avoid public embarrassment. Her attorney brought in a video taken the night before, where she looked visibly upset during the rehearsal dinner. But what she didn't know was that my client had text messages from her that same night, sent hours later, thanking him for being smart about the prenup and saying, "You're so responsible. I wish my sister had done this too." The timestamps lined up after the video. Even worse, she signed the prenup the following morning, with 2 witnesses, and had a notary present. Her idea. We showed the court the full timeline. The judge rejected her duress claim and enforced the prenup as is. She got nothing outside of it, and nearly got sanctioned for trying to mislead the court. She thought her tears would override signatures. Instead, they drowned her case. Story 21. This case involved a man whose ex-wife wanted him to pay for her MBA, claiming it had been a joint dream. She framed it as something they had always planned together, and that he had promised to fund it after the kids were older. What she didn't realize is that we had an old email chain from 4 years back, where she turned down a scholarship from Columbia saying, "I'm done with school. You do your thing, I'll enjoy being rich later." Even better, she attached a meme in the email of someone being carried over a finish line. When we brought that chain into court, the judge took issue with the tone. She tried to explain it away as jokes between spouses, but the judge saw it for what it was: calculated entitlement. The court denied her education claim, then shifted to asset division. Her biggest mistake? She had used joint funds to pay for a $14,000 Chanel handbag a month before filing for divorce, claiming it was a necessary self-care investment. The judge didn't agree. She lost her education request and was ordered to reimburse my client for the handbag. Expensive tastes, even more expensive mistakes. Story 22. My client's ex-husband asked for 60% of the marital assets because he believed his charisma built our social circle, and she wouldn't have landed her job without his net. He even submitted emails from her boss, claiming they showed his influence. One message said, "You're lucky your husband introduced us. You'll fit right in." But that one message ended up ruining his case, because the signature at the bottom wasn't her actual boss. It was her old boss's assistant, who later gave a sworn affidavit that she was just being friendly and sarcastic. She even added, "I remember thinking he was full of himself." Then came the bigger reveal. His greed drove him to lie about their finances. He failed to disclose a crypto wallet worth $90,000. He'd hidden the funds by transferring them to a friend's account. But his friend got subpoenaed and cracked immediately, said he thought he was helping with taxes. The judge ruled it as intentional fraud. My client got a larger share of the house, full retirement rights, and he lost every inch of credibility. He thought personality could outplay paperwork. It didn't. Story 23. This one involved a couple who'd opened a bakery together. The wife was the baker. The husband handled the marketing, which really meant uploading 2 Facebook posts a week. When they split, he wanted half the business, claiming his branding was the reason they had foot traffic. He submitted a long presentation to the court outlining his contributions, including slogans, interior design ideas, and spiritual motivation. It was laughable. We called their assistant baker to testify. She casually mentioned that he rarely came in, and when he did, it was to complain about lighting or flirt with customers. But the clincher was surveillance footage. He'd forgotten that the bakery had cameras. We had a dozen clips showing him sitting on his phone for hours, occasionally eating product and leaving early. The judge didn't even need to hear closing arguments. Ownership was awarded entirely to my client. He got zero compensation. The business flourished after he was out. The moral? Don't ask for half the cake when all you did was eat the frosting. Story 24. A man filed for divorce and wanted to keep everything, claiming his wife had contributed nothing but bills during their 8-year marriage. She was a freelance illustrator, and he called her work hobby nonsense. He even mocked her Etsy account in court. But when we submitted her 1099s and PayPal history, the judge quickly realized she'd brought in more net income than he had in the past 3 years. He panicked and said the numbers were fake. Then, like an idiot, he claimed he had helped manage her business and was entitled to half of it. That backfired hard, because now we could subpoena his email and found dozens of nasty messages to her, mocking her art and threatening to shut down her little online garbage store. Those emails were so cruel, the judge ruled him emotionally abusive and ordered him to pay spousal support to her, citing that her work was her sole income, and she endured an emotionally stifling environment. He left the court stunned. He tried to belittle her work and ended up funding it. Story 25. This couple had a prenup, basic, fair, mutual, but after they split, the wife tried to contest it by saying she had been emotionally pressured into signing and wasn't in a right state of mind. Her mistake? She submitted an audio recording she had secretly taken the night before they signed it, thinking it would prove coercion. Instead, it recorded her advising her sister that she was faking nerves and planned to sign now and fight it later. The transcript sealed her fate. The judge enforced the prenup to the letter. But it didn't stop there. Her recording was seen as an attempt to manipulate the court, and her behavior throughout the case showed a pattern of deception. She was ordered to pay all legal fees, lost her spousal support, and was warned that future appeals would be scrutinized closely. She tried to bluff the system. The system called her hand. Story 26. I handled a case where the wife was divorcing a small-town firefighter. She claimed he was financially incompetent and insisted on managing the division of all assets herself. Her proposal was absurd. She wanted the house, both cars, and half his pension. But here's where it got wild. To justify taking the cars, she claimed he couldn't drive well due to emotional instability from job trauma. Her attorney even presented a psychological evaluation. Only we discovered she had written it herself, posing as a licensed counselor using a fake email. It was laughably amateur. She forgot to change the font in the header, and the email signature had a typo in psychologist. We reported it. The court launched an inquiry and suspended her pending criminal investigation for forgery. In the end, she lost all credibility. The judge awarded full custody of their child to the husband. The house was sold and profits split, and she was fined for tampering with court documents. She wanted everything and ended up with a record. Story 27. My client's ex-husband demanded $70,000 for investment opportunities he passed up during their marriage. He claimed she had discouraged him from joining 3 startups that later succeeded, and he deserved back pay for her negativity. We were speechless. He even presented a PowerPoint in court listing the startups, with timestamps and what his shares would have been worth. The court humored him for a moment. But during cross-examination, I asked him if he had any proof that he had been offered positions or made formal commitments. He said, "No, but my gut was right. I could have been rich." That quote made it into the official transcript. Then came the kicker. One of the founders of a startup he mentioned was subpoenaed and admitted they had passed on working with him due to his erratic behavior and conspiracy theories about crypto and aliens. The judge dismissed his request with prejudice and actually laughed. My client kept her assets, and the court asked the ex-husband to pay a portion of her legal fees as a penalty for wasting judicial resources. Greed can be funny, until it's expensive. Story 28. In one of my wildest cases, my client's ex-wife demanded exclusive rights to their shared vacation property in Colorado. She claimed it had always been her sanctuary, and she couldn't breathe without it. Her argument might have worked, until she posted a TikTok during the proceedings titled, "Selling the Mountain House and Starting Fresh." The video went viral. She walked through the home, mentioned listing it with a luxury agent, and even joked, "This was never my style anyway." We downloaded the video before she could delete it and submitted it as evidence. The judge didn't even let her speak after seeing the footage. Her request was denied, and my client was granted primary ownership of the property. What's more, the judge called her out for wasting court time and using emotional manipulation while simultaneously trying to profit. She went viral for all the wrong reasons. Greedy Ex meets digital footprint. Story 29. This one was a true boomerang case. The wife filed for divorce and accused my client, a quiet, introverted engineer, of being emotionally abusive by neglect. She asked for full custody, sole ownership of their condo, and a monthly stipend to rebuild her confidence. Her big misstep? She submitted old therapy notes from her iCloud account to show the emotional toll he took on her. In those notes, she had vented extensively, but also revealed she had been cheating for over a year and planned to drive him away slowly. The quote, "I want him to hate me so I can leave clean." The therapist had flagged it as manipulative behavior. We brought the full record into court. The judge reversed the custody request and ordered a psychological evaluation. She failed it. My client received majority custody, kept the condo, and was awarded compensation for the legal battle. She tried to play the victim and instead exposed herself in her own handwriting. Story 30. I represented a man who had spent years building a successful podcasting network. His ex-wife, who never appeared on any shows or managed a thing, filed for divorce and demanded 50% ownership. Her argument? The brand exists because of my emotional support. She even testified that she was his muse and claimed intellectual property rights to the network's name because she helped pick it during a wine night. We submitted the actual domain registration record, which was tied to a date before they even met. But her biggest mistake was using her own lawyer to pitch a new podcast to Spotify under the same network while the divorce was pending. That made it clear she wasn't trying to negotiate. She was trying to hijack the brand. The judge froze all her claims and ruled in favor of my client, granting him 100% ownership. She not only lost her claim, but was also forced to sign a cease and desist agreement. She tried to rebrand him out of his own business and ended up banned from even saying its name. Story 31. My client was an ICU nurse. Her ex-husband, a failed YouTuber, filed for divorce and demanded 70% of their assets, arguing she never supported his dreams. He tried to make the case that she undermined his brand by refusing to appear in his prank videos, calling her a business liability. He even submitted a spreadsheet of lost revenue projections based on videos he never made because she wasn't fun enough. We were ready to destroy this in court, but then he helped us. He submitted a hard drive of his content as evidence of his entrepreneurial efforts. What he didn't realize was that the hard drive also contained several videos of him mocking her job, calling her a glorified maid in scrubs, and filming her sleeping after night shifts without her knowledge. Those clips killed his credibility. The judge ruled him emotionally abusive and performative. Instead of walking away with 70%, he walked out with none. The court awarded her full asset retention and a restraining order. He wanted to go viral. He did, just in court. Story 32. A woman came to us terrified. Her ex-husband was suing her for half her inheritance. She'd received a farm from her grandfather, passed through generations. He claimed it was marital property because they both enjoyed visiting. He even claimed emotional trauma for being cut off from the land. But we dug through her documents and found an email from him sent years ago to a realtor, trying to sell the farm behind her back. In it, he said, "She'll never know. It's just dirt and weeds anyway." We presented the email and his expression turned gray. The judge asked if he stood by his emotional trauma claim. He muttered, "No, Your Honor." The court ruled that the farm was not only fully hers, but his actions were considered malicious. My client was awarded legal fees and a restraining order from the property. He wanted the land. He got banned from stepping on it. Story 33. This case still stuns me. The husband claimed he co-founded his wife's fashion business because he once suggested the name during dinner. That was his basis for wanting 50% of everything, including future royalties. He showed a napkin with the business name scribbled on it, claimed it was a founding document. We analyzed the napkin. It was from a steakhouse that didn't exist when the company was founded. Even better, she still had the original business plan PDF, created 2 years prior to that dinner. But then he made things worse. He submitted an idea journal with more contributions. Turns out he'd copied lines from well-known marketing books and passed them off as his own. We found entire paragraphs plagiarized from Seth Godin's blog. The judge looked at the notebook and said, "Did you think I wouldn't Google this?" His claim was thrown out. He was publicly embarrassed, and the ruling gave her full ownership of the business. He tried to trademark her success and branded himself a fraud. Story 34. A woman demanded primary custody and full child support from my client, claiming he was unfit due to constant travel. He was a wildlife biologist, gone for days at a time, sure, but always arranged care and was active in their son's life. Her big argument? That their child cried every time he left. But she accidentally submitted home security footage meant to show him leaving often, and it included audio of her coaching their kid to cry for the camera. In one clip, she can be heard whispering, "Remember, if you cry when daddy leaves, the judge will see how sad you are." That was the end of it. The judge immediately suspended her custody request, and my client was granted joint custody and control over the parenting plan. Her manipulation cost her everything she tried to stage. She wanted sympathy, got sanctions. Story 35. A man filed to divorce my client and demanded compensation for emotional labor he claimed she failed to provide. He submitted journal entries where he'd recorded every time she didn't say thank you, ignored his jokes, or failed to initiate affection. His ask? $120,000 for 10 years of unmet emotional needs. We thought it was a prank until he cried on the stand. But then we found his Reddit posts, dozens of them. One in particular, pretending to cry in court is harder than it looks but might be worth it. Another, can't wait to squeeze the courts like a lemon. We verified the account via his linked email. His username was literally part of his gamer tag. The court threw out his entire request, referred him for perjury review, and ordered him to pay her legal fees. He wanted to monetize heartbreak. Instead, he funded her lawyer. Story 36. My client was a music teacher divorcing her husband, who demanded half of her prized possession, a 120-year-old Steinway piano passed down from her great-grandmother. His argument? I dusted it sometimes. He claimed emotional attachment and even brought in a piano tuner to say he scheduled every appointment. But the piano tuner, under oath, revealed the opposite. The ex once canceled a tuning because he thought it wasn't worth keeping some old thing running. Then came the kicker. The ex posted on Facebook Marketplace 3 months prior trying to sell a rare antique piano for $90,000, listing photos taken from inside their house. He hadn't told her. We submitted screenshots. The judge not only denied him any rights to the piano, but also penalized him for attempted conversion of property. He tried to play the victim, but the court played him. Story 37. A man filed for divorce and wanted the dog. Nothing else. Just the golden retriever named Max. His reasoning? She can keep everything else. I raised him. We were suspicious. Most of his texts and photos with Max were recent. We subpoenaed the vet records. Guess whose name had been on them since day one? My client's. But then the ex did something unthinkable. He submitted a DNA test, proving he shared a rare gene marker with the dog, calling it proof of fate. Problem: it was a human test kit. He ran a 23andMe on himself and misread the data, thinking a common ancestry trait made him Max's soul match. The judge was so baffled that they recessed for 10 minutes to compose themselves. Needless to say, the court ruled the dog belonged solely to my client. Her ex left empty-handed, except maybe with a new understanding of how genetics works. Story 38. My client's ex-wife was a tech recruiter who insisted she deserved half his NFT portfolio. She called it joint digital art appreciation, despite never having once logged into the wallet or helped with any transactions. To strengthen her claim, she submitted a printed Excel sheet listing each NFT with speculative future values. Total claim: $1.2 million. But she made a critical mistake. She included an NFT that had been sold 6 months ago for $40 and forgot to delete it from the list. That opened the door for us to investigate all the listed assets. We found out over half of them were already sold, stolen, or flagged as scams. Her entire case unraveled. The judge ruled she had misrepresented asset value and had no real involvement in the investments. She walked away with zero crypto and a mild lecture about speculative greed. She tried to cash in on hype. Instead, she inflated herself right out of the deal. Story 39. A woman demanded emotional restitution during the divorce. She wanted $500 per month because her husband didn't remember their anniversary for 5 years straight. She came in armed with journals, highlighted passages, and anniversary gift catalogs she never received. But she pushed too far when she submitted a custom calendar app she claimed he ignored. In court, she showed screenshots of dates marked our anniversary with sad emojis. We got access to the metadata of the screenshots, all created 3 weeks before the hearing. Even worse, the App Store showed the calendar app had only been downloaded once on her phone, not his. She admitted under pressure that she'd fabricated the reminders to make a point. The judge dismissed her entire emotional claim, struck her support request, and warned that continued bad faith filings could result in penalties. She tried to bill the past like it was overdue rent. Instead, she overdrafted her credibility. Story 40. My client was a disabled veteran who had started a woodworking business after his injury. His wife, now ex, had rarely been involved. But during divorce proceedings, she demanded 50% of everything built with her emotional support. That alone was absurd, but she doubled down, insisting she also deserved royalties from the designs he posted on Etsy. Her argument? I inspired the curves. When asked to explain, she said the shapes reminded her of their first vacation, which sparked the emotional wave that led to artistry. We were dumbfounded. Luckily, my client kept meticulous design journals, with timestamps, drafts, and even YouTube comments showing strangers had helped develop his signature patterns long before that vacation. The court found her testimony to be abstract at best, deceptive at worst. The judge awarded her nothing from the business and limited spousal support due to her false claims. She wanted to carve out a piece of art. She whittled herself down to nothing. Story 41. I represented a chef who had built a popular food truck business from scratch. His ex-wife wanted half of it, claiming she helped design the vibe. Her contributions? She picked the truck's paint color and created the Spotify playlist he played while cooking. She came to court with mood boards, playlists, and old texts that said, "Babe, I love the teal color." She truly believed that earned her half the business. We weren't even worried until she submitted a proof of co-branding document she said he had signed. It was a fake, and we proved it instantly. The signature was copy-pasted from a lease agreement, and she hadn't even aligned the baseline properly. Once exposed, her attorney bailed mid-case, and the judge forced her into a settlement where she received none of the truck, no royalties, and had to issue a written apology as part of the record. She wanted to claim the flavor. She got burned instead. Story 42. My client had been married for 14 years to a man who did little more than online poker and day trading. During divorce proceedings, he demanded the family minivan, claiming he used it for executive errands and client meetings. We thought it was ridiculous. But then he submitted business mileage logs, showing he drove over 12,000 miles that year for work-related tasks. Problem was, we found his Twitch channel. He streamed almost daily from his home, during the exact times he claimed to be driving. One clip even had him say, "I haven't left this chair in 2 days." We compiled a timeline, mileage versus live stream, slam dunk. The judge not only denied his claim to the van, but revoked his demand for spousal support, citing dishonesty. He tried to bluff with spreadsheets and folded when the receipts rolled in. Story 43. A woman tried to claim her ex-husband's book royalties post-divorce, even though she'd signed a document years earlier stating she wanted nothing to do with his depressing little writing career. She argued that her emotional turmoil was the true muse behind his success, especially for his recent best-selling memoir. But the book wasn't about her. It was about his late brother and childhood trauma. She hadn't even read it. We proved that by having her take the stand. She got the title wrong and confused the plot with one of his older novels. Then came her real downfall. She had tried to pre-sell her own memoir to publishers using the line, "This is the real story behind the author of Ashes in the Attic." We got the query letter in discovery. That one document killed her credibility. She lost the royalties, was blocked from any profit on her own book if it discussed him, and was issued a gag order. She tried to rewrite history and ended up erased from the margins. Story 44. This ex-wife tried to demand 50% of the future value of a business my client hadn't even started yet. He had a patent pending on a product, still in prototype, and she argued that since he dreamed it up while they were married, she was entitled to half of its projected future earnings. Her lawyer submitted a financial projection of over $10 million, pulled straight from a Kickstarter campaign draft that had never even launched. It sounded absurd, but the court had to hear it out. So we presented emails showing she'd repeatedly called the idea stupid and told him, nobody needs a solar-powered cooler with a phone charger. Even better, she'd sent him a meme at 2 a.m. that said, "Invent something useful for once." The judge smirked while reading it and said, "So you're claiming a share of the business you once called idiotic?" Request denied. He kept his IP, future profits, and his dignity. She tried to cash in on a dream, after stomping on it. Story 45. A husband demanded the marital couch during divorce. Yes, the couch. He said it had sentimental value, even though he had moved out 9 months earlier and left it behind. When my client said fine, take it, he then tried to inflate the value of the couch on paper to $12,000 to balance asset division. Claimed it was a custom Italian leather piece with rare artisan craftsmanship. We had the receipt from IKEA. It cost $849, and the model was still in circulation. Even worse, he had posted a meme weeks earlier mocking the couch and tagging a friend. Never buying furniture when you're broke and married again, LOL. We submitted it with a straight face. The judge laughed audibly. The court valued the couch at its original price, denied him any asset adjustment, and warned him not to weaponize low-value items again. He tried to turn cheap furniture into a golden ticket, but it stayed cheap, and so did his exit. Story 46. My client's ex-husband tried to argue that her tattoo business was a marital brand, and he was entitled to 50% of its profits because he was the one who told her to quit waitressing and chase her passion. The audacity. He backed this claim with a single printed Facebook post from 5 years ago, where he commented, "You got this," under a photo of her first tattoo gun. We didn't even need to work hard. She had receipts, tax filings, a lease in her name only, and supplier invoices going back to before they even met. But what sealed it? She had tattooed his ex-girlfriend's name on his arm before they were married. It was covered up during their honeymoon, and we had the original consent form signed by him, his full legal name, under the logo of her studio. The judge said, "It appears she built this alone, while you were literally just her canvas." He got nothing from the business, not even a refund for the ink. Story 47. This ex-wife sued for custody of her husband's classic car. Not the kids, the car. A 67 Camaro that he restored with his late father. She never drove it, hated how much he spent on it, and once told him, "It's either me or that rust bucket." But in court, she claimed it held deep personal memories of road trips and milestones. Problem was, she mixed up the model, calling it a Charger, and said they drove it on their anniversary in 2014. The issue? DMV records showed the car wasn't roadworthy until 2016. We showed photos of the restoration, text messages where she begged him to sell it, and her Instagram post from 2021 saying, "Finally making space in the garage. Goodbye, Mantoy." The judge ruled she had no valid emotional or legal claim and warned her not to insult marital assets she later tried to claim. She tried to turn horsepower into leverage. She stalled out hard. Story 48. My client's ex-husband asked for part of her social media sponsorship income because he helped take her photos. He even brought a ring light to court as evidence of co-production, claiming he purchased it and that, without his lighting sense, she wouldn't have landed brand deals. His demand? 25% of all future collaborations. But his case fell apart when we showed that every invoice, contract, and product shipment was addressed to her name only. Worse, he had been using her brand email behind her back to solicit free items for himself, posing as her assistant. The final blow? One brand rep testified via Zoom and showed an email where he offered to trash her reputation unless we send more gear. The judge called it manipulative, unethical, and disqualifying behavior. He was barred from using or profiting from her brand in any way. He tried to monetize the spotlight. Instead, it exposed him. Story 49. This case was about a cat. The husband demanded full ownership of a rescue cat they adopted together, claiming the cat responded only to him and that it would be cruelty to separate them. My client was devastated. The cat was registered in her name. She took it to every vet appointment and paid for its special diet. But his entire argument rested on a video he filmed where the cat jumped into his lap. We watched the video in court, and at the end, he shakes a tuna can just off camera. The audio picked up the sound clearly. We then played another video, this time from my client, where the cat jumped into her arms on its own. No bait, no trickery. Even the judge chuckled. The final ruling gave her the cat, plus an order that he not attempt any further contact under false pretenses. She later told me the cat peed on his jacket before he left. Even pets know who's faking affection.